All right, let's jump right in. We're talking about a genuine medical emergency, one where your digestive system, which is normally this silent, incredibly reliable machine, just stops, comes to a screeching halt. And this isn't just a simple clog. Oh no, this is a crisis that escalates by the minute, where the intestine itself is in danger of dying. The clock is ticking from the very get-go.
And this is where our story begins. We're going to follow this patient's case because these symptoms, they paint a classic and frankly a very scary picture for any ER doctor. This isn't just some textbook example. It's a real-time medical puzzle that the team has to solve, and they have to solve it right now. So, in this kind of medical detective story, the very first step is to figure out what on earth could be causing this internal traffic jam. And here's what's so interesting. The usual suspects, the most likely culprits, they totally depend on where the blockage is. Is it in the small intestine or the large one?
Yeah, the list of potential causes changes dramatically based on location. If the problem's in the small bowel, the number one cause is adhesions. These little bands of internal scar tissue, maybe from a surgery years ago, that can literally kink the intestine like a garden hose. But in the large bowel, you're looking at different things like a tumor blocking the way or a wild condition called a volvulus, where the bowel literally twists itself shut.
Okay, so with all those possibilities swirling around, the team's immediate priority is to narrow the search. Is this a small bowel problem or a large bowel problem? Answering that question is absolutely essential because the body sends out completely different distress signals for each one. The body's clues are pretty distinct if you know what to look for. A small bowel obstruction, like the one our patient has, tends to hit fast and hard. You get this intense, wave-like pain right in the center of your gut, and the vomiting starts early and happens a lot. A large bowel blockage, though, that's more of a slow burn. The belly swells up gradually. Being constipated is the main complaint, and vomiting, that usually doesn't show up until much later in the game.
Of course, symptoms are one thing, but the doctors need proof. They need to see it. And that's where imaging comes in. On a CT scan, the small and large bowels have these unique visual signatures. The small bowel looks like a bunch of coiled pipes right in the center. The large bowel, on the other hand, kind of frames the outside of the abdomen. These visual clues are exactly how they pinpoint the precise location of the jam.
Okay, so the team has a pretty good idea where the problem is. But hold on, you can't just rush in and fix it. The patient's body is in crisis mode. It's starting to shut down. So the absolute first priority is to pull them back from the brink of collapse. You have to stabilize the system. And this is the emergency playbook. It happens fast. First, IV fluids start flowing to fight off the dehydration. Next, a nasogastric tube. Yeah, a tube through the nose, down to the stomach, is put in to relieve all that pressure and stop the vomiting. Once the pain is managed and their vitals are looking better, then they're rushed off for that definitive CT scan that's going to tell the surgeon exactly what they're up against. So, the patient is stabilized, the scans are up on the screen, and now we've reached the most critical moment in this entire crisis. This is the point of no return. A decision has to be made that will determine everything that happens next. And this is the question hanging over the entire team. Is this something that might resolve on its own with some conservative care, or is waiting the most dangerous thing they could possibly do? The risks of getting it wrong are enormous. So how do they know when it's time to make the call for surgery? Well, they're looking for very specific, very scary red flags. The most urgent one is any sign of strangulation. That means the blood supply to the intestine is cut off and the tissue is actively dying. That is a 5-alarm fire. Another absolute emergency is a closed-loop obstruction. Imagine a section of bowel blocked at both ends. It's a ticking bomb. If you see any of these signs, the debate is over. It's time for surgery immediately. And those red flags, they exist for a very, very good reason. The team isn't just trying to clear a blockage. They are fighting against the clock to stop a catastrophic chain reaction of system failures from taking over the entire body. Seriously, the bowel tissue can go from healthy to damaged to dead in just a matter of hours. Every single minute that the blood supply is cut off, the damage spreads like wildfire. This isn't just a race to unblock a pipe, it's a race to save the organ itself from dying. Because if they don't get there in time, the consequences are devastating. The intestine dies, that's necrosis. The dead tissue can then rupture, spilling toxic material all over the inside of the abdomen.
This causes a massive infection called peritonitis, which triggers sepsis, a body-wide inflammatory response that can and does lead to death. That is the downward spiral the team is racing to prevent.
You know, when you look at this whole ordeal, from a simple blockage to a full-blown surgical emergency, it really reveals something profound. The complex systems inside of us just work, silently, perfectly, day in and day out, until suddenly they don't. It's a pretty stark reminder of how incredibly fragile that internal balance is, and how quickly a single point of failure can launch a desperate life-or-death race against time.